My morning starts with a cup of coffee in bed, followed by a walk in the percent where I live. My neighbors are expats or world travel professionals. Perfect neighborhood, a loving family. I'm happily married and I have an accomplished daughter, a very cute, cuddly pug, the perfect life, a fairy tale life that one can think of. But my Kadam took me someplace else, beyond the comforts of the life that I led. I started this journey with my dad's voice in my head: do not be a national waste. Be useful to yourself, be useful to your family, be useful to your society, be useful to your nation, your planet, to whatever level you can, whichever way you can, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually. I mean, he used to say, being a mother when you grow up, being a parent, but a good parent, bringing up a citizen responsible, or wherever you live in the world, is also is also being useful. Very high values and ideologies to live a life with. In Indian families, we women are taught in our societies to adapt, as we have to get married. And as we get married, we have to move to husbands' families and be the dutiful daughter-in-law, mother, wife. And anything that you want to do for yourself would be with following the responsibilities of the duties that you must as the lady of the house. And I'm talking about the educated women like me in the cities. I worked in the footwear sector before I got married, and even as in the Development Commission Handicrafts office. But after marriage, I moved to Kolkata, and trying to be useful to myself after my baby was born, my daughter, I tried multiple formats of businesses. I was enjoying the duties that I played, various roles that I played, but I also wanted to play the role of satisfying myself for what I am, or what I enjoy doing, or how am I being useful to myself. I even curated with my sister a handicrafts shop in Delhi. And for this shop to sell handcrafted products, started to travel to rural areas. And most of these rural areas where I sourced, where I traveled to, were in the back and beyond of even rural settings that we were used to. It seemed almost like a set from a movie. You take a passenger train and you reach a certain place, and then you walk a couple of kilometers, non-motorable pathways, to reach a place where the men and the women, and especially the women, would sit and weave baskets, crude baskets, which they would sell at 8 rupees a basket, which would take about 3 to 4 hours to make them. You'd sit under the trees and do this. Now, this 8 rupees included the cost of the bamboo which grew in the backyard, which was taken for granted. And these 4 hours that they were working was after finishing all the chores of the family and the duties of the families that they did. But the kind of life that they led, although there was a lot of similarity, but the comforts were missing. And I just thought, if at all I could make their life comfortable, would it be only through the economic model? Or is that all that's required? Do they actually want it? Will that change their lives? There were so many questions that would, come to my mind. I wanted to understand what made them tick. Because it was a life almost like from the sets of Gods Must Be Crazy. I started to travel more now to the villages. I slept on the floor with them, the way they did. I ate what they ate, which would normally be boiled rice with salt, and the pitch, which is the starch when you boil it, 1 meal a day. And the starch would keep them going with the energy that's required. I would go to the bathrooms the way they did. which means to the fields. There was no other option. While living in Orissa in one of the villages, I erected a tent because to have a bath in the winter month out in the open before anybody woke up or the sun came up was very hard for me. I was not used to at all with cold water. I requested 2 village girls to get me a bucket of water. Green color water comes to me in my tent. And when I asked them, when the government has given you a bore well and a tube well, if they could get the water from there for me. And they said, no, Didi, this water is coming from Patal, from underground. Whereas the water that we bring for you, is touched by the sun's rays and purified. So the ways of life that they saw, that they lived with, we started to connect slowly. We started to laugh together slowly over jokes which we shared. On the similarities that we had, we started to share those. Not as somebody who's more privileged and calm, but a heart-to-heart, a woman-to-woman talk. And thus started the celebration of life, the coalition together, to see how we could start a journey together and create a socially, economically empowering journey for all. But the guilt of a mother doesn't leave you when you're traveling 10 to 14 days a month, month after month, and month after month. And especially when you don't have to do this to run your home, to earn a living, and you're leaving your 4-year-old daughter back home. She started to stammer. We took her to the doctor, and the doctor said, most probably because of the emotional insecurity, me and my husband both were traveling a lot. So I took my daughter for a 15 days trip, one such trip. She saw this magical world where she just pointed in the pond to a lotus that she liked. I still remember Lily and Sally, 2 girls from the village, probably slightly older than her, jumped into the pond to get her that lotus flower. She was overjoyed. She saw how her mother was a mother to hundreds of other ladies in the village. She saw how it made me laugh and cry with them. I mean, we ate together, we sang together, we worked together, we weaved baskets, we experimented, we did techniques. Even a 4-year-old could see how alive her mother would come by sharing these simple pleasures of joy and caring, and how this was empowering all of us, her mother and the other women in the village. This empathetic kid of mine has now grown up, and she's a leader in her university in the United States. She makes me a proud mother. This incident that I talk about was in 2006. These hundreds of women that I speak about make me a proud mother as well. When Naxals make you hostage for a full 2 days in a rural setting, when the local panchayat menfolk come to where you are staying, threaten you to leave the village and leave immediately and never to come back, because apparently we are spoiling the women. आप हमारी औरतों को खराब कर रहे हैं. Of course they're getting spoiled because they have started to earn some money now. They are financially not as dependent on these men. It's a threat to them. So I tell these women the next morning that I might have to go back, but I will be back. From where these 24 turned into 400, I do not know. They gherawed the panchayat office and said that to revoke the threat back, and that Didi is not going to go back, that this team is not going to go back. I don't know. I wasn't sure then, I'm not sure now, that they found their voice, or they had this voice which was suppressed. And that made me stronger then. Or was it that the love that shared increased exponentially because it was done without a give and take equation of what I was to get or what they were to get from this relationship that we were building? It is then that I knew that I was definitely stirring something in the societies that was making a difference in the lives of these women where we worked and the communities where we worked. It is that stirred, that extra dosage of sugar in that cup of coffee that keeps me going. There are days when I tell my husband in the morning that at night, that I'm so tired of leading a life with such hardships. And I also want to enjoy life of being a managing director's wife. Why should I travel in a local passenger train? Why should I get down from the station and walk a couple of kilometers? Why do I have to fight the battle of so many women? And he just laughs and he says, honey, just sleep over it. And in the morning, do what makes you happy. Morning starts again with that cup of coffee, with that extra dosage of sugar coming in from that one call which will come from some village or the other. And then it's enough for me to get charged up once again. When women were told by the men folk during trainings, तुम्हारा गोश्त बना के खाएंगे when you come back from work, we are going to cook you for mutton tonight and eat you. And these women, very patiently, without replying, continue to carry on working, not just because it's an economic gain, not just because it empowers them, but it makes them happy. You know that the battle of fear is won. Fearlessness for me is an attitude. It's the freedom to do what you like to do. To be a part of Atmanirbhar Bharat, the Atmanirbharta, which is the self-reliance, comes from within. Comes by first transforming your inner demons, by loving yourself first. And how do you do that? By knowing who you are, by owning it and living it. This Payal, I was just 10 years old, I remember, when my teacher would say, I would want to hide under the desk if the teacher, not that the teacher asks me a question and I have to stand up and answer. I'm not saying that I'm not nervous as I talk with the spotlight on me talking to you. But I think I've sort of managed to find the strength to handle this fear and the courage to handle it with life's experiences. The judgmental society that we live in will always judge us, no matter what we do. But continuing to be who we are will release that fear factor, release that energy, I would say, to be useful. And the initial failures at not being able to do what one was discovering what one wants to do further will just act as fuel till it gains momentum. This energy and fearlessness that comes to work day after day in this space comes from the fear of not doing enough with my time and skill set that I could have added some value somewhere. I think this validation of living, not existing, also charges up those batteries within, that renewable energy which is within there. And it acts like a chain reaction if you can pass it on to somebody else. So with these hundreds and hundreds of women that we work with, I think we've been able to do that. I feel proud and useful today. I'd like to tell you one story of Nirupama Patra, a basketry maker's daughter in Odisha. She's an example to be beacon in Odisha. I got to know her about 10 years ago when she was a young girl. Now she's leading a team of 180 after a lot of slaps in her life, what she went through. Now she's got 2 daughters of her own and leading a change, being a change maker herself. Having touched lives of hundreds of thousands of such communities in 3 states of India. Today, we are working in Kashmir with the World Bank in Gandarbal area. We are happy that the government of Kashmir with the World Bank has invited us yet again to work with 600 to unleash the strength within these 600 people so that they can set up and run their own community. Strength does not come from physical capacity. It comes from an indomitable spirit, will within. Jai Hind.